This is how the KDF, or could I say armed forces, by then it was called armed forces of Kenya. This is how the KDF infiltrated the NIS. Some people have expressed concern that I take long stories. But you see, some of these stories do not need saying ABCD in a point form. It is a long history for it to make sense. The military, the Kenya military, infiltrated the NIS. By then, NIS was called DSI, Directorate of Security Intelligence, in 1990. But for you to understand the background of why it infiltrated, you have to start in the 60s, 25 years earlier. And you see, you cannot take a story of 25 years and reduce it into 25 seconds. So, for those of you who believe that I take long, just try to understand, because there is a background that led into the military infiltrating the Directorate of Security. And when it infiltrated, it, just like any other service, which I will tell you about, they were not happy. You see, for any profession, when you start down here, you always have a belief that if it is not you, a classmate of yours will reach the peak of your profession. Your classmate will reach, even if it is not you. But you see you rising up to 90%, and then when you are remaining where we have the snow, somebody else comes from elsewhere, then it really kills the morale. For you to understand how the military infiltrated the NIS, let us start with when Kenya attained independence. When Kenya attained independence, the NIS by then was called Special Branch, and it was under the Kenya Police. Now, there was a gentleman's agreement between Jaramogi and Jomo. The agreement was simply that positions in the government, 60% will go to Kikuyus and 30% would go to Luos. Then the rest of Kenyans would take the other percentage. This one, especially when it comes to senior position and positions of influence. That is the arrangement that was done at the time of independence. But just like the Swahili say, pagu na pwaguzi. Pwagu na pwaguzi, the Luos were pwagu, or Jaramogi was pwagu, the Kikuyu or Jomo Kenyatta were pwaguzi, a thief and a robber. So the Jaramogi was the thief and the Jomo was the robber, the serious thief. Now, when it came to police, the head of the police later ended up, you see what used to happen was that they would agree in the evening, they would agree Jomo and Jaramogi on something. Then Jomo, being the head of government, was required the following day to reduce what they have agreed into a Kenya Gazette. He was supposed to gazette the two gentlemen's agreement. But in the morning, when the Kenya Gazette comes out, what had been agreed is placed aside. So you find that Kenya Police holistically, the police commissioner was Bernard Jenga Hinga. He was deputized by Michael Arum. He was deputized by Michael Arum, who was a deputy commissioner. And he was alone on that rank. And below him, there's a rank which was called Senior Assistant Commissioner of Police. Now, Senior Assistant Commissioner of Police, these were a few, not all of them, a few of the provincial police officers or police bosses, and also the head of CID and the head of special branch. So when it came to CID, since the overall was a Kikuyu, it was supposed to be, the CID was supposed to be headed by Cleophas Okoko Aluo and deputized by Ignatius Nderi. But in the morning when the gazettement came, it was the other way around. Ignatius Nderi was the director of CID and Cleophas Okoko was his deputy. When it came to the intelligence, first of all, before Hinka was made the commissioner, he was the director of intelligence. So he was his deputy was James Kanyotu. So when he was made the commissioner of police, then Kanyotu was to be made the director of intelligence. When Kanyotu was made the director of intelligence, his deputy was Aluo. His deputy was Aluo, and I can't recall his name. But when they continued that way, James Kanyotu was not comfortable with the Luo deputy. And if you study the history of James Kanyotu was not comfortable with any deputy. You see, if you understand the role of a deputy, any position, a deputy is somebody who is on standby, so that should your position be vacant, that deputy takes over. So any deputy is supposed to be competent enough to take that. So Kanyotu knew early enough that having a deputy means that anytime he can be ejected. So Kanyotu was never comfortable with any deputy, just mention it. But here he had a deputy who was a Luo. And other formations and whatever had the Kikuyu, where you find any place, even every sensitive place, except the military, you'd find that the Luo, the Kikuyu, actually the agreement between JJ, Jomo, and Jaramogi was, if this ministry or department is headed by a Kikuyu, then the next ministry or department should be headed by a Luo. But somehow, Jomo had his way, whereby every department was headed by a Kikuyu and deputized by a Luo. And that is how it was. But we are talking now of the intelligence, which was then known as special branch. So there was the deputy to James Kanyotu. James Kanyotu took several years without without going on leave. Basically, special branch officially started in 1968, because that is when we received the charter, the special branch charter, and we were given the directive, SB Directive number 1, SB Directive number 1 of 1968 from State House, Mombasa. So Kanyotu was not comfortable with the Luo deputy, and he spent many years without going on leave. But one time he went on leave. I do not know how he ended up in leave. Maybe he was sick, or maybe he had conditions that forced him to be on leave. When he was on leave, this deputy, who was now the acting director, appointed 25 people to the rank of assistant superintendent. He appointed 25 people to the rank of assistant superintendent of police from the rank of chief inspector. Out of these 25 people, 15 were Luos. 15 were Luos. I talked to one of them. One of them was Ademba. Ademba is a Luo originally from Siaya, but these are Siaya Luos who settled in Kabras. In Kabras, Malava constituency, there is a place called Wa-Okumu. Actually, when they moved, just like we have Luhyas Wandombi, Dombi took some Banyalas from Busia to Kakamegas. So those are Wanyalas who were brought by Dombi That is why at Navajo they are called Wanyala Wandombi. We also have Luos in Malava, and they were led by a Luo called Okumu. So that is why between Malava and Kakamega there is a stage called Okumu. These people talk fluent Luo and also speak fluent Kikabras. When they speak Kikabras, unless someone tells you or he introduces himself by name, you can never know that he's a Luo. So Ademba was a Luo. He's now late. I was a Luo from Kwaukumu. He was one of the 15 Luos who were appointed to the rank of assistant superintendent of police. There were 15 Luos, 5 Kikuyus, and 5 other tribes. 15 Luos, 5 Kikuyus, and 5 from another tribe. When James Kanyotu came, he was annoyed and he revoked that Kenya Gazette and placed there another Kenya Gazette where he was appointing 15 people. He was appointing 15 people to the rank of assistant superintendent of police. Of those 15, 5 were the 5 Kikuyus that the deputy director had appointed were now, the 5 were the ones that Kanyotu appointed to be assistant superintendent. Then the 5 Kikuyus, then the 5 from other tribes. And then the Luos had been 15, so I appointed 5. So you can see that the end game was that out of the 25, 15 were reappointed and 10 were not reappointed. And of those 10, all of them were Luos, including the late Ademba, a Luo from Kabras. So with that, I don't know whether that is the reason or other things. He talked to the president, and we had the deputy director of the special branch being relieved of his duties. I don't know whether he was transferred to any other place or he just became a civilian. I do not know there. Then Kanyotu was given a deputy who was a fellow Kikuyu. Kanyotu was a Kikuyu from Kirinyaga. He was given a Kikuyu from Kiambu who was called Stephen Moreithi. Stephen Moreithi. Now Stephen Moreithi became the deputy to Kanyotu, and I just want to tell you as I continue, the way Kanyotu used to operate. Kanyotu made it possible for himself not to have deputies, and it has relevance to how the military entered into the intelligence. So Steve Moreithi was deputy director. So the 3 of them started various businesses. There was several companies that were owned 33% each, where the deputy director, Stephen Moreithi, had 33% shares. James Kanyotu had 33% shares, and Daniel Arap Moi had 33% shares. They started businesses and whatever. So they continued on so much that they became powerful. This one happened until 1978. 1978, when Jomo Kenyatta died and Moi became the president. It hardly took 2 years. It hardly took 2 years after Kenyatta died. Around 1980 is when James Kanyotu approached Moi with a suggestion. He approached Moi with a suggestion, and I want to give you today's picture. Supposing the 3 had a company, had business undertakings, and Kanyotu told Moi, why don't you see this business of ours is worth 6 billion shillings. Remember, I'm telling you about today's value, not the value of that time. Supposing they have a business of 6 billion shillings. Then he told Moi, now, if we have a business of 6 billion shillings, supposing we edge out Stephen Moreithi, it means that you will have 3 billion and I will have 3 billion. Moi accepted. Then when Moi accepted, the first thing what they did was a Kenya Gazette came out that Steve Moreithi was transferred from being the deputy director of intelligence. He was now becoming the general manager of Uplands Bacon Factory in Limuru. The man was annoyed. He was annoyed. He even sued the government. And then, you see, the Waswahili wanasema hasira za mkizi. He became annoyed, and in his annoyance, he walked into a trap. Then he was detained without trial by Moi. 1980, Moi was then a president. And for the young people, I want to tell you, because you may wonder what detention without trial is, that you are taken to Kamiti Maximum Prison, Shimolatewa Prison, or any other maximum prison. And in an ordinary case, you are jailed. If say you are found guilty of an offense, you are told that you are jailed for so long. On the day you go to prison, you know when you will come out, isn't it? Because you are told you are jailed for 4 years or 4 months or 4 weeks. So every day you can count and know you are going near. But detention without trial, you used to be jailed without going through a court process, and you are jailed for the period that the president wants. And the people who had powers to detain people without trial were 3. 1, the president; 2, the deputy head of state, that is the vice president; and 3, the minister for internal security. So Steve Moreithi was detained, and when he was detained, that was 1980, he was detained, and Kanyotu was happy that he did not have a deputy. That is what he wanted, because if you want to be sacked and you say, I don't have a deputy who can take over whatever. But then there was pressure for him to have a deputy. Then in 1981, Mr. Muthiora, for those of you who know Dagoretti politics, Mr. Muthiora was appointed the deputy director of intelligence. He was from the famous Muthiora family. His brother flawed, at one time his brother flawed Njoroge Mungai, and all of those people who come from Kawangware, and mostly Dagoretti know about the Muthiora family. But when Muthiora was made the deputy director, that was around 1982, it was discovered that Muthiora is beyond the retirement age by a few years. So in May 1983, was it April or May 1983, Muthiora was retired. So you find that Kanyotu again, I'm trying to insist on this point of Kanyotu wanting the position of deputy director to be vacant so that he is safe. So he was that way. So it went on that way, and it reached a time when there was need to have a deputy. And there were some people who were, there were some people who were qualified to be deputy director. One of them was Musikiti Kusimba. Another was Christopher Maluki Lati, a Mukamba by tribe. But those days, for reasons that I may not understand, Luhyas for a long time have never been given senior ranks in the security position. So Msikiti Kusimba could not get it. But Christopher Maluki Lati had all the qualifications. Imagine he had recently been the head of external intelligence. He was a very good person. He was a very good intelligence officer, and he was a very good diplomat, a person who could fit very well as the director of intelligence. But you know what? And Moi also wanted Amukamba to be the director of intelligence. But you know what? Mulu Mutisia did not want people whom he could not control. You see, Christopher Maluki Lati had one qualification, that he was loyal to the truth. He was loyal to his profession. So Mulu Mutisi has told Moi, no, we don't want that person. So Lati was transferred to the Ministry of Tourism as deputy director. And then it was decided that since it was the turn for the Wakamba, they had to look for a deputy director who was a Mukamba, and the only Mukamba who was of a senior position then was one called William Kivuvani. William Kivuvani is a professional literate person. That is a word I've invented. A professional literate person is a person who was employed when he was illiterate, but because of the exposure of his profession, he became so. And Kivuvani, when he talked in English, you could think that he's somebody who's a graduate or anything, but it is somebody who grew up intellectual-wise and profession-wise through the professional stair climbing. So he was made the deputy director. Kanyotu was comfortable with him, with Kivuvani being the deputy director, because Kivuvani was a professional literate. If he would not have joined the intelligence, maybe he would not even reason like our primary school head teacher. So he was comfortable with that person. But then it continued that way until one time Mwai Kibaki resigned. You know, Moi wanted to be ahead of what people were doing. So Kibaki, I even do not know how he ended up in resigning as the Minister for Health and starting a Democratic Party of Kenya. What Moi would have wanted was for him to know that Kibaki is about to resign or whatever, then he sacks him ahead. But you see, when he demoted Kibaki from vice president to minister for health, Kibaki just stayed that way without any action. So Moi had believed that Kibaki was a harmless person. So when Kibaki resigned, he took the mat below Moi, and he embarrassed Moi. Moi saw it that since Kibaki is a person from Nyeri, and there is a close relationship between Nyeri and Kirinyaga, more than Kirinyaga with any of the, Murang'a and Kiambu. So Moi interpreted that Kanyotu knew about it but kept it away from him. So there was pressure for Kanyotu to leave the position. So Kanyotu left the position, and since his deputy was Kivuvani, Kivuvani was left there. And Kivuvani messed big. And he performed like a robot. His deputy was called Rono. So Rono could do anything. In fact, even drafting everything. So Rono used to take things to Kivuvani to sign. Yes, Rono was a Kalenjin like Moi, but Moi saw so much incompetence. And also Moi wanted somebody who was loyal to him. And what a better person to be loyal to him than his former ADC. And that is how Boynet ended up there. Boynet by then was a brigadier, and that is how a few military generals started coming there. Before I continue that, I would say I'm also re-emphasizing, saying that bringing in people from outside demotivates other people. Intelligence work is not a work that people will show out that they are demotivated for obvious reasons. But from having worked with them, I knew they were very much demotivated. When one general, just like Nigerians used to say, general come, general go, general come, general go. But then I also want to tell you about something that happened that was very unfortunate. it hurts us, and it hurts me even where I'm seated here. There was a time when a letter came from Nyati House, the national office, to all offices of intelligence officers countrywide, where they were supposed to secretly monitor and forward the names and plot sizes, plot areas of people, people who have grabbed plots, people who had grabbed plots, so that Nyati House, the national headquarters, knows who had grabbed plots, and they they wanted to know. We don't know what action they wanted to take or something, but they just wanted to collate that information. So in Eldoret, we had Senior Superintendent Masika, who was the head of the intelligence in Wasingishu. Um, he wrote a detailed report where he said that he emphasized on three plots. He emphasized on three plots which were grabbed, and owners did not pay even a single cent. The first plot he emphasized was Barngetuny Plaza. For those people who are in Eldoret, you know the Barngetuny Plaza on the main highway. Barngetuny never paid even a single cent for that plaza. He grabbed it. Hezekiah Barngetuny was a close friend of Moi. He was one of those elders who were semi-literate elders who are very close to Moi, Kina Mulu Mutisia, and so on, and also Nasir, Sharif Nasir. Although, if you compare Sharif Nasir with other wazes of that nature, Sharif Nasir was more educated than those people. So he Barngetuny grabbed that and then constructed Barngetuny Plaza. He also said that there are two plots which are neighboring each other, which had been grabbed. One had been grabbed by Ishmael Chelanga when Ishmael Chelanga was the district commissioner, Eldoret and Wasingishu. The other plot which had been grabbed next to that was a plot grabbed by then Colonel, Full Colonel Boynet, a former ADC to Moi. I've talked about Barngetuny Plaza. Let me talk about Ishmael Chelanga Flats apartment. There is a time when somebody, a tenant, had left Ishmael Chelanga's place, and you imagine how life was that time. Jinsi may not believe it. This is what happened. That the plot was private property of Ishmael Chelanga, and instead of him hiring watchmen there, he had assigned APs to guard. APs were guarding there with guns, just like they guard banks. And when they were guarding there is a new tenant who was coming in, a new tenant who was coming to occupy those houses. And Kenya Power came. When they came, the APs were not at the gate, so they entered, and the Kenya Power people were reconnecting power to the house. When the APs came, they found Kenya Power. Even without asking any question, they shot and killed one of the electricians, who had been told by his bosses that Chelanga had, by then Chelanga was a provincial commissioner in Eastern, that Chelanga had found a new tenant, so can you reconnect power to that house? And then the next, the next plot belonged to Boynet, Brigadier Boynet. Now, of those three, nobody, Barngetuny never paid a single cent. Ishmael Chelanga never paid a single cent for the plot, and even Boynet did not pay for a single cent for that plot. Okay, constructing the whatever, well, they use their money or they use their loans or whatever, but buying the land they grabbed. So he wrote that letter and it went to the province, Rift Valley, it went to headquarters, Nairobi, that the three had grabbed the plots. And when they said so, when they said that the three had grabbed the plots, later on, as I've said, that Kanyotu had made sure no competent person was to deputize him. So the president saw that he should outsource a new director. And when the new director came, who was a former ADC, he had access now to all the intelligence reports within the special branch, within the intelligence countrywide. And he came there and saw a report wrote by Masika that he had grabbed that without paying for a single cent. Masika had bypassed the retirement age by a few years. That is when he was reminded. He was just called straight from, by then he had left, he had been transferred out of Eldoret to Kapsabet. He had been transferred from Eldoret to Kapsabet to be head of the Nandi district security intelligence. He was called all the way from there and informed that you are retiring in the next 5 minutes. So you see, apart from demotivating the intelligence officers of taking there, it gave the intelligence officers a permanent fear, because if you can take anybody from anywhere and make him the director of intelligence, how sure are you that the intelligence that we have been carrying all those years cannot reach anybody? So that was also a bad thing, because it meant that intelligence reports that had been written about these military people, they can still come across it at a higher level. This thing has also happened. It has happened in various places, like in the prisons. We have had prisons. Wambua was the first person who was the PP or provincial police officer, Nyeri Central, who was made the commissioner of prison to take over from Andrew Saikwa, and so on and so forth. So if I were to come across the current president or future presidents, I would insist that please don't, in anything, in whatever profession it is, please do not take people from outside. Like the recent head of prison was Brigadier retired Warioba, a former military man. I think if it is prisons, let prisons be headed by prison warders who are professional warders from the time they left school, and so on and so forth. This thing of bringing in, it's like a helipad, bringing helicopters to come and instead of landing from the ground and you take your steps up all the way to the upper floor, you land with on an helipad there and whatever. And that one was not good, and it can never be good. My viewers, that is how the military infiltrated the NIS. I still believe that anybody who heads NIS, National Intelligence Services, should be a career intelligence officer. Thank you.